One of the biggest advantages of intermittent fasting is that it allows you to work with your body's natural metabolic rhythm by consuming food during the hours of the day when your metabolism is most active. So you can think of your metabolism as being a clock that runs well for a number of hours of the day and then winds down as your day ends. An important activator of your metabolism clock is your first bite or sip of food. When your clock starts and your metabolic engine begins to rev up, your body experiences a peak in insulin sensitivity and fatty acid oxidation that gradually diminishes as the day goes on. What that means is that your body is able to utilize and process food better at the beginning of your eating window than at the end. Black coffee is a non-caloric drink, so the question becomes, does black coffee count when it comes to starting your metabolic clock? This is a gray area for sure, but there are a few hints we can take from the scientific literature. First of all, if your coffee contains caffeine, the caffeine would need to be processed by your liver, which is your main metabolic organ. However, many of the studies done on intermittent fasting allowed participants to consume non-caloric drinks like coffee and tea, and the consumption of these drinks did not seem to hinder their results in a significant way. Another consideration is that there are helpful components in coffee that have been shown in my studies to induce autophagy, which is a process of cellular cleanup that is enhanced when we practice intermittent fasting. Caffeine improves fat oxidation, which is the breakdown of fat. So there appears to be a trade-off. Your cup of black coffee might start your metabolism clock, which technically opens your eating window, but if that is the only thing that you are consuming in the morning hours as your fasting window comes to an end, you may be gaining an advantage in respects to autophagy and fat release.
So when you look at coffee, we have to really understand what we're trying to get from both coffee, but also what we're trying to get out of our fast. Okay, we know that coffee can induce some kind of fat burning effects. We also know that fasting can induce all kinds of fat burning effects. But we have to look at when they work together and when they don't. You see, if you are fasting because you're trying to completely abstain from food and beverages altogether, then it's pretty simple. It's pretty cut and dry. No, you shouldn't have coffee. But if you're trying to fast because you're looking for metabolic effects and the autophagy effects, which is where you basically recycle cells and consolidate cells, then actually coffee can be very beneficial for you. Okay, so when we look at fasting, we have to look at the two key benefits that most of us are probably seeking out. One is fat loss. Okay? Fasting boosts fat loss via the production of catecholamines, adrenaline, noradrenaline, epinephrine, stimulating what is called hormone-sensitive lipase. Basically, it turns on fat burning at the cellular and hormonal level. Okay, but additionally, fasting has a huge benefit when it comes down to autophagy. I sound like a broken record because you've probably heard me talk about this in other videos, but autophagy is simply where the body recycles cells. So if we have old cells that are kind of decrepit and not doing a good job anymore, stronger cells are going to go through and they're going to eat those cells and they're going to consolidate and become one stronger cell. So basically, autophagy, when you're in a fuel-deprived state, encourages cells to get stronger by getting rid of the weaker ones. All right, this sounds like a great thing, right? Well, guess what? Coffee has now been shown to boost autophagy, even when you're not fasting. So let's break this down a little bit. Autophagy requires what is called the inhibition of mammalian target of rapamycin, also known as mTOR. Okay, what mTOR is a very anabolic pathway. And I don't want you to freak out when I say that we need to reduce mTOR. It does not mean that you're going to lose your muscle. Okay, autophagy by definition is not anabolic. Okay, so anabolic means you're building muscle. It means you're growing. It means cells are growing. Literally, by definition, autophagy is the breakdown and the recycling and the consolidation of cells. In no way, shape, or form could that ever be construed as anabolic. So what this tells us is that we get a double whammy effect. We get sort of a perfect storm. We are already getting autophagy benefits from fasting in the first place. But now by adding coffee into the mix, we boost that even more by shutting down mammalian target of rapamycin. We just enhanced our fasting effect. A study that was published in the Biochemical and Biophysical Research Communications Journal. And this study took a look at caffeine's effect on autophagy. So we already know that decaf and caffeinated coffee have the same effect on mTOR when it comes down to the polyphenols. But what about the caffeine? So we found that caffeine actually stimulates the upregulation of what is called AMP kinase, so AM protein kinase. Okay, this AMPK gets upregulated, and it's in a calcium-deprived AMPK upregulation that this occurs, and that causes autophagy to stimulate through its own pathway. Okay, that was complex. Basically, all it means is that caffeine stimulates a particular mechanism in the body, an enzymatic activity, that only occurs when you're in a fuel-deprived state otherwise. So the consumption of caffeine triggered autophagy through a different pathway. Okay, in case you're not tracking with me, do you know what this means? This means you literally have a trifecta here. Fasting, promoting autophagy in and of itself. Then you have the inhibition of mammalian target of rapamycin. That's inducing autophagy in and of itself. Then you have the caffeine actually stimulating the upregulation of AMPK. Okay, a whole different pathway to stimulate autophagy. That's 3 different ways that you're stimulating autophagy. So to me, whether you are after the fat loss benefits or the autophagy benefits, black coffee is beneficial in a fasted state. So if you're looking for a clean, wholehearted fast, then yes, you're going to keep the black coffee out of the equation. And for those of you that were wondering, the inhibition of mTor, the whole anabolic switching off kind of thing, I don't want you to freak out at all, because guess what? After you break your fast, mTor elevates significantly. Okay, so when you break your fast, you're not going to be in an autophagy state anymore. Okay, you're not going to be recycling cells. You broke your fast, you spiked your insulin, you're in your feeding window, it's a whole different world now. But the cool thing is, the induction of food into your body creates this massive increase in mammalian target of rapamycin. So what that means is that even though you have autophagy occurring and you may not be anabolic during your fasting period, the moment that you eat, mTor kicks on and you have the ability to put on gobs of muscle in a way that you ordinarily wouldn't be able to. So don't freak out. The inhibition of mTor is perfectly necessary and perfectly good. And in the long run, it's going to allow you to build more muscle and burn more fat.